2012 was the year of my retro gaming resurgence. My dad and I built an arcade cabinet for console gaming with an X-Arcade stick, but moving houses left me with no room for the gigantic monolith. Fast forward a decade, regular meetups at an arcade had me wanting that experience at home again. I knew damn well that I didn't have room for a Sega Blast City, and major compromises had to be made. Well, maybe not to that extent. If I was to have another cabinet, I needed something versatile and small. Really small. Rather than make something from the ground up, I knew of an older product that'll take care of most of the work. Thanks to the iCade made by Ion. And I based my first build around this, with a Mr. FPGA and a repurposed iPad LCD. The back exposes all the messy wires, but hey, it's functional. The mounted UPS battery outputs 5V for the Mister, as well as 12V for the LCD screen. I get about an hour of play at full brightness, otherwise it can be charged and played simultaneously. Seeing it's an all-in-one cab, rather than settle on a static marquee, I used the Dynamic Marquee Project TTY2TFT by Real Larry, aka Ojaksh. It's a neat little LCD that displays pictures and videos specific to the core chosen. I have zero experience in 3D print design, and I'm pretty hacky in my woodworking, but I knocked up the marquee frame using MDF and gave it plenty of glossy coats for that shiny plasticky finish. The stereo speakers are powered by the built-in amplifier on the LCD driver board for the iPad 3.4 screen, a tried and true display and driver combo that outputs next to zero lag 1536p. The Mister can display this specific resolution, and that hallmark retina display makes for some convincing CRT mask and phosphor effects, but the ultra bright LCD's backlight really washes out the blacks. The 3D printed case I found online conveniently has just the right amount of friction for Yoko orientation, and the little groove on the iCade's control panel holds it well in place for Tate. The replacement stick and buttons are connected to a zero-lag Demon Byte Arduino, and behind the dummy coin door is a touch sensor to feed arcade credits. In essence, the iCade with a Mister and iPad LCD ticks all the boxes for a home arcade cabinet. It's compact, versatile, and wait, no CRT? I got pretty lucky and was able to pick up a brand new iCade in box, and it got me thinking if I could cram in a 9-inch Sony PVM. But how well will it fit? I use these collapsible stands to elevate 9-inch PVMs for better viewing and sound, and my initial test proved that the monitor in Yoko orientation slotted right in, although on a steeper angle than I felt comfortable playing. And all it needed was a slight lift. So then I was at a crossroads. Do I just leave the iCade unmodified and prop the PVM on a stand, or do I build something a little more purposeful? It all felt a little superficial with the collapsible stand, as I could fundamentally achieve the same solution without the iCade. So I measured the approximate height where the monitor sat and carved up some scrap wood to build a mini ramp. My beta testers and I had fun playing on the prototype, and it was every bit the single-player arcade experience that I wanted in a tiny cab. But I wanted to hide the CRT's ass from jutting out. If you pick up an iCade, I'd suggest to at least change the stock buttons and stick, as they feel very inferior with a fair amount of travel before actuating with a loud and heavy clunk. The buttons are an uncommon 28mm diameter, and you can widen the holes to accommodate for standard 30mm buttons, but I found a local supplier that sells their version of 28mm gold leaf switches that slot right in. They're essentially silent to press and respond with minimal effort. Then I used the original wires to conveniently join the active and ground signals for each button. Now I wonder, did Viagra sponsor the arcade because this is easily the stiffest stick I've felt? And like the stock buttons, requires way more effort to actuate than I feel is acceptable. Like I did for the first arcade, I bought a Sanwa JLF replica to put in its place, which comes with a square gate. I'm no arcade expert, and from my understanding, square gates are for the intermediate player to easily float diagonals to rapidly hit those Hadoukens. Whereas for a novice like myself, I prefer riding an octagonal gate, where the extra guidance gives a higher chance of successful quarter circle movements. After taking off the metal plate so the stick sits flush to the arcade, the 4 screw provisions line up perfectly. I'd advise to reuse the round plastic stick cover that came with the arcade, as the replacements don't fully conceal the gaping hole. The stock Bluetooth controller probably would be fine to use, but without objectively testing its lag, I swapped it for a proven consistently low lag Demon Byte adapter, flashed to an Arduino Pro Micro using Sketch. The JLF stick comes with a handy little connector, so all that's left to do is solder the wires to the Arduino. I also installed 2 touch sensors, one behind the coin slot like last time, and the other on the opposite side as a spare button. Back to the PVM ramp, I personally didn't like how the CRT sat at a forward slanting angle to the arcade, so I cut the legs down and refined the base to make it easier attaching the enclosing walls, which I wanted to be lightweight as they're really only cosmetic. After giving 2 coats of primer, 3 coats of white gloss, masked the corners for a Neo Geo MVS inspired finish, and then 3 coats of red. I'm not really the artsy type, but I'm happy enough with how this turned out. I wanted a slick floor for the PVM to slide on, and again using what I had lying around, I cut some spare black felt pinboard to size and glued it to the base. Although the material worked a little too well, and if I'm giving it my all in Tate, the PVM was at risk of sliding out. It was an easy fix with adhesive foam on each side for friction, and now she's safe. And for the finishing touch, before I went with the dynamic marquee on the first arcade, I printed something basic on translucent backlit paper, and I may eventually add a small LED backlight, but this looks fine for now. So now I've got the choice. Will the cabinet have a Mr. FPGA, a Raspberry Pi, or should I cram in both?
Mister! Get this off of me! Mister!
Like warm apple pie. McDonald's or homemade?
And I chose the Mister. To be honest, I would have preferred to put in a Pi as it plays practically any retro arcade game, but in my case lied a major roadblock. Gamepad Demon Byte adapters, like the USB triple controller, worked perfect on the Raspberry Pi. But if I flashed the Arduino with the equivalent arcade Demon Byte config, every button press is processed twice, making it impossible to navigate the menu. Whether this is a Recal box or a Raspberry Pi issue in general, it leaves me with no choice but to side with the Mister. I'm not too concerned for heat dissipation, as the Mister has a hefty exhaust fan blowing on the heatsink, and the PVM isn't fully enclosed, which still leaves plenty of breathing room. I brought the almost finished project to my monthly retro gaming meetup, and it got the thumbs up from my friends that are arcade aficionados. Personally, my only gripe was that it wasn't too convenient to lug around in one piece, and next time I'll carry the PVM and arcade shell separately. It's a little generic and uninspiring, but to finish off the side decal, I ordered some stickers to go on each side, and I'm happy to call this project complete.
Are
So here's how a typical PlayStation looks. Load up the arcade core, insert a coin for credits, hit the start button, and fire away. For Tate, just slide out the PVM and reintroduce it on its side. The PVM side panel shifts the monitor a little off center to the cabinet when rotated, but at this size, it ain't that big of a deal. The monitor's mono speaker gets the job done, and what separates the L series PVM from its older 9-inch renditions is an OSD and service menu. So you'll never have to take the case off to tweak geometry, and adjustments can be done on the fly. Admittedly, the build is a bit clumsy and crude, and is less convenient to transport and store than the LCD arcade. Aside from that, I'm stoked with the overall look and feel of the PVM arcade, and adding the CRT, even if it's not a traditional shadow mask, has cured my arcade FOMO. If you've got any advice on improvements, then I'm all ears. Thanks all for watching, and happy gaming.